The cold sting of alcohol hit my face before I even understood what was happening. The martini glass slipped from Kayla's hand, crashing against the floor, and suddenly, the air in that dining room was thick with silence and shame. My own son, Adam, sat across the table with a look that wasn't shock, it was calculation. That was the moment I realized my family was no longer my family. They were strangers. Strangers who saw me not as a mother or a grandmother, but as a wallet to be emptied. The dinner had been staged as a celebration. The candles glowed. The food smelled rich with garlic and butter, and laughter echoed too loudly, too forced. It wasn't love that filled the air, it was performance. Every smile had an edge. Every word was wrapped around something unsaid. I should have known then, but I wanted to believe. I wanted to believe that family still meant loyalty, that my sacrifices hadn't been forgotten. When the glass hit me, I didn't just feel the burn of gin on my skin, I felt the weight of years collapsing. The woman Adam chose to marry had just declared war, and he sat beside her in silence. No defense, no outrage, just cold complicity. That moment was the explosion, but the fuse had been lit long before. Weeks of tension, whispered requests, subtle manipulations, every step had led me to that chair, under that chandelier, waiting for a celebration that turned into an ambush. I remember wiping my face, staring at the broken shards on the floor, and wondering how did it come to this? How did love twist into betrayal so sharp it could cut to answer that? I have to take you back to the choices I made, the trust I gave, and the cracks I tried to ignore. And that's where this story truly begins. For most of my life, I lived simply. I was a schoolteacher, the kind who clipped coupons, stretched a paycheck, and never once imagined luxury. My days were filled with chalk dust and children's voices, and my nights were quiet, spent in a modest house that always needed one more repair. Retirement didn't come with comfort, it came with calculation. Every grocery trip meant checking prices twice. Every winter meant wondering if the heating bill would stretch too far. Still, I told myself I had enough. Enough to get by, enough to be content. Then, one morning, everything shifted. A lottery ticket I had bought on a whim, just a silly indulgence at the gas station, turned into a miracle. $2 million. Even saying it felt unreal. My hands shook as I read the numbers again and again. Suddenly, I wasn't the tired woman worrying about rising property taxes. I was free. Or at least, I thought I was. I didn't dream of mansions or diamonds. My dreams were smaller, softer. Paying off the mortgage so the house would truly be mine. Setting aside money so I could live out my years without fear. Maybe, if I dared, finally visiting Ireland. The place my grandmother once described with such fondness. It wasn't greed, it was peace I was chasing. That's when Adam's calls became more frequent. My son, who had grown distant over the years, was suddenly eager to know how I was doing. He asked about errands, about my health, about things he hadn't asked in so long. Kayla, his wife, was warm in a way I hadn't felt from her before. She spoke of helpful financial planners, of strategies to make the money grow. I remember her hand on mine, gentle but firm, as if guiding me toward choices I hadn't made yet. A part of me knew the sudden attention wasn't born of love alone, but I wanted to believe. I wanted to believe this gift, this miracle, could stitch our family back together. Maybe, just maybe, the money could buy back closeness where years had built distance. So when they suggested a dinner, a celebration of sorts, I said yes. I thought it was the beginning of something healing. I couldn't have known it was the start of something else entirely. I remember getting ready for that dinner, as if it were more than just a meal. I pressed my best blouse, smoothed my hair, and told myself that maybe this was the night things would shift. My stomach fluttered with something between nerves and excitement. After all the years of strain, after all the silence and distance, perhaps this gathering was a sign that my son and his wife wanted to celebrate me, not just the money. Their house looked like it had been pulled straight from a magazine. The table was set with polished silverware, tall candles flickering with a golden glow. The wine glasses were crystal, catching the light in a way that made everything feel staged, almost too perfect. Kayla greeted me in a dress that shimmered under the chandelier. Every detail of her appearance calculated. Adam, usually distracted, pulled out my chair with a smile that seemed just a little too wide, too practiced. The food was exquisite roasted lamb with herbs, vegetables arranged like artwork on the plate. The aroma of garlic and rosemary filled the room, wrapping itself around me in warmth. For a moment, I let myself relax. I sipped the expensive wine and felt something stir inside me, the hope that maybe, just maybe, we were finally finding our way back to one another. And yet, there were cracks. The way Adam's eyes lingered on me a second too long, as though measuring something unspoken. The way Kayla's laughter floated in the air, high and sweet, but never touching her eyes. The conversations felt polished, like rehearsed lines in a play. Still, I brushed those thoughts aside. I wanted to believe this was love, not performance. When Adam refilled my glass before I even asked, when Kayla leaned in with that perfect smile, I told myself it was pride, that they were proud of me, proud of what I had accomplished, proud that maybe my life was finally free from worry. I held on to that thought like it was a lifeline. I didn't see the storm gathering in the corners of the room, waiting to break. At first, the dinner still carried the illusion of warmth. The candles flickered gently, the wine loosened my shoulders, and the flavors on the table were rich and comforting. But beneath that glow, something sharp pressed at the edges of the evening. I saw it in Kayla's perfectly composed smile, in the way Adam's hand lingered near a leather folder on the sideboard, untouched until the plates had been cleared. When the folder finally appeared, it landed on the table with a heaviness that seemed to change the air itself. I watched Kayla slide it forward with polished grace, her nails gleaming under the light. She opened it slowly, deliberately, as though revealing a gift. But what stared back at me was no gift. Page after page, numbers sprawled in bold type. A mountain of debt that didn't belong to me, $7,000 of it. The word family kept dripping from her lips like honey masking poison. She framed the figures as if they weren't theirs alone, but ours, a shared burden I was meant to shoulder. Adam didn't argue. He didn't protect me. Instead, he leaned in, his voice soft but insistent, weaving loyalty and guilt together in a net I could already feel tightening around me. Inside, my heart slammed against my ribs. My first instinct was disbelief. How could anyone accumulate a sum so vast, so reckless? My second was dread, because the expectation in their eyes was unmistakable. This wasn't an invitation to help. It was a demand dressed as duty. The warmth I had felt earlier curdled into something bitter. The lamb on my plate turned tasteless. The wine soured on my tongue. My hands stayed folded in my lap, though every muscle wanted to push back, to stand and walk out. but part of me still ached with love for my son. That conflict tore through me, maternal instinct against the fear of being devoured by their greed. The celebration was gone. In its place sat a performance, one carefully staged to corner me. Every smile, every gesture, every word had led to this moment. I sat there, silent, letting the weight of the folder press against my chest as surely as if it were a stone. And in that silence, I knew the truth. This dinner had never been about family. It had always been about money. Kayla leaned forward with the folder spread open, her hands moving gracefully over the pages as if she were unveiling something to be admired. But what she called a plan was nothing more than a chain, polished and dressed in words about opportunity, about investing in their future. The number screamed at me from the page, $7,000 burning into my eyes, repeating in my mind like a curse I couldn't shake. She spoke with the calm assurance of someone rehearsed, painting their debt not as recklessness, but as sacrifice, a noble risk they had supposedly taken for the sake of a better tomorrow. Every gesture was measured. Every glance meant to make me feel as though I had been handed a duty, not a choice. Then Adam leaned in, his voice soft, heavy with the weight of guilt. He wrapped his words in the language of family, reminding me of everything I had done for him since the day he was born, as though motherhood itself were a lifelong contract I had failed to complete. His eyes didn't plead, they cornered, and that, more than Kayla's polished performance, was what tore me apart. My son wasn't a bystander. He was part of this. The betrayal cut deeper with every moment. Love twisted into leverage, loyalty weaponized against me. I sat there, staring at the neat columns of figures, my throat tight, my chest aching. I remembered the joy I felt when I first held that lottery ticket, believing it might bring us together again. Now it was being used as evidence against me, proof that I owed them more than I had ever given. The room seemed smaller, the air heavier. I could hear the tick of the clock on the wall, sharp and relentless, underscoring the silence between their sentences. My wineglass trembled in my hand as if it too could feel the weight of expectation pressing down on me. And yet, under the crushing tide of guilt and heartbreak, a fire sparked inside me. I realized that this was not about family, not about sacrifice or love. This was about greed, plain and merciless. They had taken the most sacred bond of my life and tried to turn it into currency. That was the moment I knew if I gave in, I would lose not just my money, but myself, and I would not allow their manipulation to define me. My hands trembled, but my voice was steady. I told them I could give a small amount, a gesture of goodwill, $1,000, and nothing more. It was the line I drew in the sand, the moment I refused to let guilt twist me any further. For a second, I thought my calm might cool the fire in the room, but it only poured gasoline on it. Kayla's face contorted, her polished mask cracking wide open. The sound of her chair scraping back was sharp enough to cut through me, and before I could breathe, the cold splash of her martini slapped against my skin. The gin stung my eyes, dripped into my collar, and burned worse than any words she could have thrown. I blinked through the haze of liquor, staring across the table at my son. Adam didn't move. He didn't speak. He just sat there, his silence louder than her rage. That silence was its own betrayal, colder, sharper, more permanent than the glass shards scattered across the floor. The room felt hollow, stripped of warmth. My chest ached, But underneath the heartbreak, there was something stronger. Resolve. I stood, my wet clothes clinging to me, my voice calm in a way that startled even me. I told them to leave, not shouted, not pleaded, just firm, final. My home was no longer theirs to poison. The door closing behind them echoed through the house like a verdict. I sank into my chair, feeling the sticky chill of the drink drying on my skin, and yet inside, I felt lighter. I had lost something, maybe the last remnants of the family I thought I knew, but I had gained back myself. That night, I learned a truth that still cuts deep. Love without respect is nothing more than control. And I would no longer be controlled. But as I would soon discover, their cruelty didn't end at my doorstep. It was only shifting form, preparing for another strike. I thought the storm had ended when the door shut behind them. But I was wrong. Their silence was not surrender. It was calculation. Days later, I felt the second blow land, harder than the first. A letter, heavy in my trembling hands, carrying the weight of betrayal I never imagined. Adam and Kayla had gone to a lawyer. They had filed claims that I was incapable of handling my own affairs, even whispering the poisonous words elder abuse into official ears. The room spun as I read. My chest tightened, as if a fist had closed around my lungs. To be painted as neglectful, even abusive, when all I had ever done was love and sacrifice, it was surreal, cruel beyond measure. My own flesh and blood trying to strip me not just of money, but of dignity. Nights grew long and restless. I lay awake, picturing strangers in suits flipping through papers that reduced me to a caricature of weakness. I imagined my neighbors looking at me differently, gossip twisting truth into shame. My mind replayed Kayla's cold stare, Adam's hollow silence. Every memory of family warmth now warped into evidence of manipulation I had been too blind to see. Fear gnawed at me. What if they succeeded? What if the law believed them over me? I saw my home, my independence, my voice all slipping away. That fear sat in my stomach like a stone. But in the darkest hours, something else began to stir. The same resolve that made me say no at my dinner table rose again, steadier this time. If they wanted a fight, I would not collapse into the role they had scripted for me. They had underestimated me, mistaking age for weakness. I would gather my strength, my truth, and my evidence. Their lies might have been sharp, but I still had weapons of my own memory, integrity, and the trust of those who knew me better than they did. The fear had not vanished, but it had changed shape. It became fuel. I would not let them write the ending of my story. The first days after the threat felt like walking through fog. Fear clung to me, thick and heavy. I kept replaying the word abuse in my mind, the way it had been twisted into a weapon against me. For a moment, I thought maybe they had already won, but then I forced myself to move. My hands shook as I dialed my attorney, but the sound of a steady, professional voice on the other end gave me something I hadn't felt in weeks: grounding. Sitting across from him later, the papers spread out between us. I felt the weight of each signature. Every pen stroke was more than ink, it was me reclaiming control. We drafted a trust to protect my assets, walls of law that Kayla and Adam could not scale. My financial advisor stepped in next, walking me through numbers and safeguards until the fear loosened its grip. And then, through a local foundation that advocates for seniors. I found allies who had seen this kind of betrayal before. Their understanding eyes told me I wasn't alone. They showed me how to gather receipts, messages, even neighbors' observations that revealed the manipulation I had endured. Holding those documents in my hands felt like holding armor proof that my truth was stronger than their lies. It wasn't easy. Some nights, doubt still whispered. But now, alongside fear, there was pride. Quiet, steady pride. I was no longer just reacting to their cruelty. I was building a defense, brick by brick, with people who believed in me. As the files grew thicker, so did my resolve. I wasn't just defending money. I was defending my dignity, my independence, and the years I had worked to stand on my own. For the first time since that dinner table, I felt solid ground beneath my feet. I wasn't cornered anymore. I was ready. The courtroom awaited, and with it, the chance to bring everything into the light. The courtroom felt colder than I expected, the kind of chill that sank into my bones. As I sat at the table, I could feel every set of eyes on me. To my left, Adam avoided my gaze, his jaw tight. Kayla sat upright, her expression painted with confidence that I knew was nothing more than a mask. I told myself to breathe, but the sound of the gavel striking made my chest tighten all over again. When their attorney began, the accusations were laid out like knives on display. Words like neglect and abuse echoed against the high ceilings, each one a blow to my heart. To hear my own son's name attached to those lies, it felt like betrayal all over again, sharper than the night at the dinner table. But then came my turn. My attorney opened the folder, page after page of truth. The trust documents, neatly signed and sealed, proved I had protected myself long before these claims. The messages I had saved revealed patterns of manipulation and pressure, every line dripping with entitlement. And then, the representative from the foundation stepped forward, speaking with quiet authority about the support they had given me and the evidence they had seen with their own eyes. I watched the judge's face shift as the pieces fell into place. Doubt replaced certainty, and then disapproval replaced doubt. By the time the stack of evidence was complete, Kayla's mask had cracked, and Adam's silence was deafening. Their story unraveled in real time, thread by thread, until it lay exposed for what it was: a scheme built on greed and lies. The tension broke not with a shout, but with silence. The kind of silence that carries truth in it. I sat there, my hands folded in my lap, and felt the weight I had carried for months begin to lift. Not all at once, but slowly, like chains loosening. Justice does not roar, it speaks with steady clarity. That day, it spoke for me. And as I walked out of that courtroom, past the people who had witnessed everything, I knew one thing: the truth had finally been seen. My dignity was no longer in question. But for Adam and Kayla, exposure was only the beginning. What came next would strip them of everything they thought they could take from me. The weeks after the courtroom felt strangely quiet, but the ripples of truth traveled farther than I expected. News spread quickly: whispers in grocery aisles, headlines in the local paper, neighbors lowering their eyes when Adam walked by. The numbers spoke louder than any defense debt stacked high, accounts drained, assets gone. Bankruptcy was no longer a looming threat. It became their reality. I heard how their house, once filled with the newest furniture and luxury cars parked outside, was stripped bare by creditors. The polished image Kayla worked so hard to maintain crumbled overnight. Invitations stopped coming. Friends who once smiled at them turned their backs. Reputation, it seemed, could vanish as quickly as wealth. Then came the divorce. Kayla, who once clung to Adam with such determination, filed her papers, and disappeared. Some said she left town entirely. Others whispered she found someone else. What mattered was the image burned in my mind, my son, alone in a house that no longer felt like a home, staring at walls that echoed with choices he had made. For me, the silence of my own home was different. It was not empty, it was steady. My life, though modest, remained whole. My bills were paid, my trust protected, my dignity intact. Yet, I would be lying if I said there wasn't grief tangled in the relief. Losing a son to greed is a wound that does not heal easily, but what I gained was clarity. Standing my ground cost me family ties, but it gave me freedom. It taught me that love without respect is not love at all, and that survival sometimes means letting go of those who choose betrayal. Justice had been served, not with triumph, but with balanced pain on one side, peace on the other. And as I looked at the quiet stability of my days, I began to wonder what legacy I could leave behind, not in money, but in wisdom hard-earned. When I look back now, it feels like I've walked through a storm that stripped everything bare. The betrayal, the courtroom, the loss of my son as I once knew him, all of it carved deep marks into my life. For a long time, the weight of it pressed on my chest, heavy and suffocating. But standing here, on the other side, I feel something different, lighter, as if the storm that once tore me apart also cleared the sky for me to see again. I reclaimed something far more valuable than money. I reclaimed my freedom. No one holds the strings to my life anymore. My choices are mine, my future is mine, and my dignity belongs only to me. There is a peace in that truth, even if it came at the cost of heartbreak. The wisdom I carry now is simple, but it took everything to earn it. Love without respect is not love. And boundaries are not cruelty, they are survival. Family can be a gift, but it can also be a mask for manipulation. And if the people you trust most choose greed over love, you still have the right to stand tall and walk away. As for my legacy, I don't want it measured in dollars or possessions. I want it measured in courage, in the strength to say no when it matters, and in the reminder that dignity is worth defending at any cost. If someone watching my story finds the resolve to protect their own heart, then every tear I shed has meaning. So I leave you with this: guard your peace, honor your worth, and never be afraid to draw the line. And if my journey has touched you, I ask you to share it so that others may find strength in these lessons too. Like this video, leave your thoughts in the comments, and share it with someone who might need the reminder that they are not alone. Because in the end, freedom isn't something we're given. It's something we fight for, something we claim, and something we pass on. If there's one truth I've learned from my journey, it's that resilience and self-respect are not luxuries, they are lifelines. We can survive heartbreak, betrayal, and even the loss of those we love most. But what we cannot survive is abandoning ourselves. Boundaries may feel harsh in the moment, but they are what protect our dignity, our freedom, and our future. I want you to think about your own life for a moment. Where are you giving too much of yourself away? Where are you allowing guilt or pressure to silence your truth? My story might sound extreme, but the lesson is simple and universal when you choose to stand up for yourself. You reclaim your power, and no one, not even family, has the right to take that from you. I know my voice here is only one among many, but if these words have touched you, I ask you to carry this lesson forward. Share it with someone who might be struggling, someone who needs to be reminded of their worth. Leave a comment with your own story or reflection. I promise, Your words could be the light that helps someone else find their strength. And if this journey moved you, please like this video and share it so more people can hear it. At the end of the day, dignity is not given, it's chosen, defended, and lived. And if we can each hold on to that truth, maybe together we can leave behind a legacy of courage.